Hey everyone, ready for another deep dive. Today we're tackling something all writers struggle with, using sources effectively.
Yeah, making those borrowed ideas play nice with our own.
Exactly. It's like, how do we blend them seamlessly so it doesn't feel like we're just patching together other people's work?
Right, like finding that perfect balance.
Totally. And to help us crack this, we've got three sources today.
Ooh, three.
Yeah. Two excerpts from academic papers, super in-depth.
Okay, getting into the nitty-gritty.
Uh-huh. And then to lighten things up, we've got this really fun YouTube lecture. It's actually aimed at college students, but honestly, the advice is solid gold for any writer.
Practical stuff then.
Totally. So our mission today, if you choose to accept it, is to uncover the secrets to weaving sources seamlessly into our own writing. No more information overload headaches.
Love it. And one thing that always trips me up is this idea that we need a ton of direct quotes to sound credible.
Oh, tell me about it. I used to think quotes were like, the holy grail of evidence.
Right. But our sources are actually saying something pretty different.
Yeah. They're really emphasizing paraphrasing, which surprised me at first.
Me too. But it makes sense when you think about it. Paraphrasing isn't just about avoiding plagiarism. It's about showing you really get the material.
It's like you're taking the source's ideas and filtering them through your own understanding, making them clearer for your reader, too.
Absolutely. And one source even pointed out that paraphrasing can make complex topics, like statistics, way easier to digest.
It's like translating jargon into plain English, which honestly is a superpower in itself.
Totally. So paraphrasing is key. But then when we use those impactful direct quotes. When do they really shine?
Okay, yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Well, think of quotes like a highlight reel, right? You want to use them sparingly, strategically.
So like when the source's wording is just too perfect to mess with, or...
Exactly. Or the evidence is so strong, a direct quote just adds that extra punch.
Powerful evidence, unique phrasing, maybe even definitions. Gotcha. So we've got our paraphrases, our strategic quotes. Now the big question is, how do we blend it all together seamlessly so it doesn't sound like a jumbled mess?
Ah, the art of source integration.
Yeah.
Our sources actually highlight some really cool approaches for this. One that stood out to me was the sandwich technique.
Sandwich technique. Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It's all about framing your source material between your own statements. So you introduce the source, present the quote or paraphrase, then tie it all back to your argument.
So it's like you're creating an argument sandwich with your analysis as the bread and the source material as the filling.
Exactly. Another technique they talk about is name-dropping those authoritative sources right in your text.
Ooh, I like that. Adds instant credibility.
Our political science excerpt does this really well, weaving in the expert's name seamlessly. It's like, hey, this big-name researcher agrees with me.
Subtle, yet effective. Okay, this is all great. But is there like a practical framework we can use right now? Something like a recipe for source integration success.
Funny you should ask. That YouTube lecture we mentioned introduces this super simple but brilliant structure called PIE.
PIE, as in like apple pie.
Pretty much. It stands for Point, Illustration, Explanation.
Okay, I can remember that.
It's easy, right? You start with your main point, then you bring in an illustration, which could be a quote, paraphrase, statistic, whatever.
Okay, so evidence to back up our point.
Exactly. And finally, you wrap it up with the explanation. This is where you analyze that illustration, connect it back to your point, and show why it matters.
So with PIE, we're presenting evidence, but then taking ownership by explaining it in our own way. I like that.
It's all about balance. And
Yeah.
speaking of balance, let's talk about those clunky phrases like according to or as stated by. They can make even the most interesting research sound dry.
Ugh, yeah. How do we spice up those attributions and avoid sounding like a broken record?
Well, good news. There's a whole world of signal phrases out there, and our sources give some great examples.
So instead of just stating or saying, we can use verbs that...
Exactly. Verbs that better reflect the nuance of what the source is doing, like argues, suggests, highlights. It's about choosing the right verb to fit the situation.
Wait, situation. For those of us who aren't English majors, break that down for us.
Sure. It just means considering the context and purpose of your writing, like who are you writing for, what are you trying to achieve? If you want to emphasize disagreement, you might say the source contends or challenges an idea.
Ah, okay. So we're not just attributing, we're subtly shaping how the reader sees the source material by choosing the right verb. That's sneaky.
Exactly. It's all about using those signal phrases strategically.
Love it. It's like having a secret weapon to make attributions work harder for us.
And don't be afraid to experiment. Find your own style. The more you play with those signal phrases, the smoother and more sophisticated your writing becomes.
It's like having a whole spice rack at our disposal instead of just salt and pepper.
Right.
We can really add depth and nuance to our writing by choosing those signal phrases carefully. But speaking of engagement, I think one of the biggest fears people have about using sources is that their own voice gets lost in the mix.
Oh, absolutely. And that's precisely why mastering these integration techniques is so crucial. Remember, you're the architect here. You're building something new and original, using those sources as building blocks, not letting them overshadow your own creation.
It's like we're building a house, right? We're using these sources as bricks and mortar, but we're the ones designing the layout, choosing the style.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And just like with a house, the foundation is key.
Ooh, good point. So how do we lay a strong foundation with our own ideas when we're using so much source material?
Well, one source actually talked about treating a research paper like a pie, and I love this analogy. You've got the crust, which is your original argument,
And then the filling is,
the sources, those juicy quotes, paraphrases, examples, they all add flavor and substance.
okay, but too much filling and it's just a mushy mess, right?
Exactly. The crust, your voice, your analysis, that's what holds it all together.
So it's about finding that balance, showcasing our knowledge of the research, but making it clear we're the ones in the driver's seat.
Absolutely. And remember, even when we're paraphrasing or summarizing, we're still adding our own interpretation. That's what makes our writing stand out.
This is making me think about all those times I felt like my writing was just a string of quotes glued together with a few of my own sentences.
We've all been there. It was like Frankenstein's monster. Right.
Totally. But now we've got all these tools to slay that monster. Paraphrasing, strategic quoting, PIE structure, dynamic signal phrases. We're unstoppable.
Exactly. We're taking ownership of that material, transforming it from a jumble of borrowed ideas into something that's uniquely ours.
And that's where the magic happens, right? When we blend sources with our own insights, we create something truly special.
It becomes more than just a research paper. It's a conversation where we're adding something new and valuable.
We become like curators, carefully selecting the best pieces of evidence to support our masterpiece.
Love that.
Okay.
And ultimately guiding our readers toward our own conclusions.
Knowing we're not just regurgitating information, but analyzing it, synthesizing it, contributing something new.
Is that we become part of the research itself.
This deep dive is making me want to go back and revisit some of my old papers. I'm seeing so many missed opportunities.
I know, right? But hey, that's the beauty of it. These techniques aren't just for academic papers. They apply to any kind of writing where we're bringing in outside sources, blog posts, presentations, even a really insightful social media post. It's a game changer.
So it's not just about avoiding plagiarism. It's about leveling up our communication in every aspect of our lives.
Exactly. Making our arguments more impactful, establishing ourselves as a credible and engaging voice.
It's empowering.
Totally. When we have these tools, we feel more confident, more creative, more in control of our message.
We're like writing superheroes. Okay, before we wrap things up, one final thought for you all to ponder. All right, so we're wrapping up our deep dive into using sources effectively. And before we go, I want to touch on that 80-20 split our YouTube professor mentioned. 80% our own thoughts, 20% source material. How do we make sure we're hitting that sweet spot?
Well, it's about finding that balance, right? Showcasing our knowledge of the research, but also making our own contribution to the conversation.
So it's not just about presenting the info, it's about engaging with it, questioning it, making connections to our own ideas, experiences.
Exactly. We're not just reporting on the research, we're having a conversation with it, bringing our own critical thinking skills to the table.
It's like we're weaving those sources into our own tapestry of knowledge, right?
I like that. And one of our sources even suggested weaving in personal experiences too. Not like telling our life story, but connecting those abstract ideas to our own lives.
Oh, that's a great point. Those personal touches make the research more relatable, you know?
It shows we're not just academics in ivory towers. We're real people grappling with these ideas.
Totally. We're making those ideas our own. It all comes back to ownership.
Yeah, we're not just borrowing ideas, we're integrating them into our worldview.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. We've explored so many strategies, paraphrasing, quoting, PIE structure, signal phrases. We've got a whole toolkit to take our writing to the next level.
It's a journey. The more we experiment, the more confident we become.
Totally. So embrace the challenge. Find what works for you, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Exactly.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So go forth and write brilliantly, everyone.